Our next guest, kicking off the 11 o'clock hour here on the MegaCast, Irma Glaser. She is the co-state policy advocate for the National Council on Jewish Women. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast.
You're quite welcome. I'm happy to be here.
We're about 3 weeks out from the election, but still it's in the headlines. Your take on how this past election went?
Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that because the polls really were so strange. We thought we were going to be doing one thing and things came out differently, and the future seems very uncertain to us. So when we started with these webinars and this webinar is what I'm going to be talking about today, when we started with those, we called it the power of your vote. And we had a series of 3 webinars. The first one was meeting the candidates, and that was for state legislators, and that was quite important to us. And then the second one had to do with the election itself and protecting the Michigan election. And we had Jocelyn Benson, the state Secretary of State. We had Lisa Brown, who is the Oakland County Clerk, and we had the West Bloomfield Township Clerk, Debbie Binder. And that was a powerhouse of a webinar in terms of the safety of the mail and so on. And now the third one, which at the original time of planning, we sort of thought that was going to be a little bit too late. Everybody was going to be coming in with their prediction, with their pundits at the right after the election. But it's turning out to be a really good time, I think. This webinar that we're going to have, which is post-election reflections, implications for the future, is going to feature two people from very diverse viewpoints as far as we're concerned. And things have been so fluid in the past 3 weeks. We don't know from day to day what issue we really want to concentrate on. And I think that it's just been a very uncertain time. And I don't know that by the 3rd, which is just a couple of days from now, that we're not going to have something else that's going to raise its head. And we may have to shift our focus. But in the meantime, we have Brian Dickerson from the Detroit Free Press, and we have Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, who are coming to talk about what they think about what happened with the election and what's going to be happening in our future.
It has definitely been a crazy election cycle, one that we have never experienced in recent memory. But I think the one thing it did do was it really pushed so many people that maybe didn't vote before to get out and actually exercise their right to vote and to have their voices heard. So from that standpoint, a little bit of positivity that came out of this crazy election cycle.
Well, I'd like to talk about that because my organization isn't known quite the same as a public health organization or as Gleaners, the food bank, but our organization is dedicated toward, and our mission statement really is, for improving the lives of women, families, and children. And so we've had to shift with the times. We started 129 years ago. Not I, by the way, not 129 years, but close. At any rate, when we started our organization, our first thing was an education assistance scholarship, just one. And that has grown into about 140 a year that we give for students to go to college or to continue in medical school. So that's how it started. And then later on, we went into penny lunches. But then they had the free lunch program, and so we had to put that aside. Then we met the immigrants from the boats when they came over here, and we helped them to adjust with literacy. And of course, that's not something that we have to do anymore for the immigrants. But what we do is a literacy program in Detroit. We've tried to help in so many different ways, but advocacy has always been a prime objective of National Council of Jewish Women. And with this election, we decided that there were so many issues for women, for families, for children that were not being addressed. that we needed to focus something for the November 3rd election. And what we did is we mounted a campaign for getting young people to vote. So when you're asking about the election and so on, this is where we worked. We worked on trying to get young people to vote because the number of people, the number of youngsters who were voting was pitiful. It was really such a small percentage. And whether it's because they were just so busy with school or starting a new job or whatever was happening, they just were not being motivated. But different things have been happening in the past so many years that have made the job a little easier in terms of getting them interested. And we started first with a form that we developed, sending it out to college students to get them to register and to vote. And then we expanded it to something called Let's Both Vote, where we involved our members and our coalition members in calling their loved ones and asking if they had registered and asking if they had voted. And this was a very good way of involving our members and our coalition members in doing this. And then we decided to develop the webinar idea to see just, afterward, to get people involved, not just the young, but the community in general. So I hope that answers what you were asking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit different year, though. Typically a lot of the get out to vote efforts would be made door to door or at big public events, so you can reach a lot of people at one time. But you're also trying to do this in the middle of a pandemic when we're being told not to socially isolate. So how was that for you and your members?
Well, that was an interesting thing. For our members, it was a rather easy thing to do because remember that ours was an outreach to loved ones. So that made it a little easier. I agree that making phone calls, we've been asked to do phone banks and so on. That doesn't work in a pandemic. People just don't answer the phone. In fact, if it's not a pandemic, people don't answer the phone. They're screening their phones, and this is a problem. And going door to door, I think would be very risky, and I really wouldn't expect people to be doing that. So ours was not a door-to-door campaign. But we've been involved in campaigns where we have gone door to door, and we have done petition drives. Our organization was in the coalition with voters, not politicians, and we worked very hard on gerrymandering. And also, because we're very involved with equal pay for women, pay equity, we have worked very hard on minimum wage and on the earned sick time, because that's important too.
So Irma, with that, any effort that's being done by you and some of your members and volunteers to also maybe get more women involved in the elected process to get them in office?
I think it's been very interesting that it wasn't just the pandemic. It has been since 2016 where people have been more awake as to what they can do. When we were working on the gerrymandering thing, we were surprised at the number of people who wanted to be trained to work with petitions and so on. These were all unpaid people, to get people to stand out in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of places, and maybe not always having a good response, although I think we got terrific responses. But, occasionally you get somebody who's argumentative. I think that was fabulous. And I think women are becoming more assertive that way. And it is important.
Irma Glaser with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. She's the co-state policy advocate for the National Council of Jewish Women here in the state of Michigan. I know that part of your job and your effort is to lobby our elected leaders in Lansing. How has that been during the middle of COVID when so many of them aren't really in Lansing right now? We're all doing remote work.
That's a good question. And actually, before we go to that, I just want to mention, yes, we do lobby, but we are, just as your last guest mentioned, we are a nonpartisan 501c3 organization. So we do not advocate for people, for one party or another. What we advocate are for our issues. And so I've been writing letters that have been in the paper. Other people have been writing letters that are getting in the paper, and we hope that gets the attention. We have called our legislators on various issues, and in that way we have attempted to make contact. It's not easy, and you usually get a form letter answer from some people, but hopefully they're listening. And we've invited them. That was one of the reasons we had the first webinar, to meet our candidates. Some of them they were all state legislators, and some of them were running for re-election. So that is important that they come and state their views. Whether you agree or disagree with the views didn't make a difference. But we tried our best to maintain our position on the issues that were important to us.
And with that, I felt like on a state level and even on a local level, the attack ads this year were they were crazy. I mean, every time you turned on the TV, there was some type of attack ad. How hard does that make your job and that of your members to try to get out accurate information on all of the candidates?
That's an interesting thing, because I just read something recently, and I think it is true. The more you hear the attack ads, and the more you hear the lies, you hear them over and over again, the more they become the truth. And the things that are true tend to be in the background. It's almost as if negativity and anger and almost slander are the things that are more important to people, because they just hear it over and over again. It's amazing. I wish I could answer that question. I really do. One of the things that we're going to be addressing in the webinar on Thursday at 7:00 has to do with the media and the media's position in helping us to kind of root out what is true and what is not true. The biggest problem that I see that we've run into is the lack of print anymore. The newspapers, they're coming down to nothing. We used to get investigative reporters who really dug in deeply, and we still get a little bit of that, but not as much as we did. We used to get things in magazines that could help us to understand things better. But the magazines now seem to come late. They seem to come after the fact, because things are changing so quickly. And so one of the areas we're going to be talking about are the implications for media down the road. And what part did they play in the November 3rd election, in terms of, were they timely in making their endorsements? And were they timely in telling us about those proposals that were on the ballot? Which I think a lot of us don't always understand these proposals, because they seem to be couched in language that you really almost have to be a Philadelphia lawyer to know what's going on. Is there such a thing as a Philadelphia lawyer anymore? Maybe not.
But you bring up a very good point, and one that has been discussed in media circles for at least the past 10 years, because it was pretty much known that investigative journalism was going away. Print has been going away. One thing that has emerged, social media and the use of social media. And while it can be helpful, it can also be hurtful. How are you, members of you and your organization, using social media to get out your message and rally around some of these issues that you find dear to your heart?
Well, I told you we were 129 years old, so we used to use Pony Express and homing pigeons at one time. But now we have to be more serious about it. And sometimes I think that when we buy ads in different areas, it's not as effective as it should be. Word of mouth is almost better. But I think that we have to think in terms of the social media, and hope that people are looking up our contacts, whether it's YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, or whatever it's going to be, because I don't know, maybe next week there'll be something different that we need to use. They're less expensive. People seem to be on their phones and on their computers all the time now. And those may be gone too, for who knows. We may have something different coming down the pipe. But there's no question that there's been some shocks that go on. And that's what I wonder about polling. When I mentioned polling before, it was such a not really a surprise, because it's been going on now for the past few years that the polls are wrong. So should we have polls, or is there something different? And why should people be ashamed to say something at a poll? They say some people don't want to admit whatever they are. Or is it because we're using telephones and nobody answers the phones, and so maybe we only have 5 people answering? These are questions that concern me. I just wonder, where are we going to be getting? So we have to get our message out with the social media. And I have to admit, that is one area that we've been rather remiss in my organization, but we are working hard to make up for that. We've updated our website, and I'm going to tell people that they can go to our website for sure for the webinar at www.ncjw.org, and they can register for the webinar. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about other things that we have done. You know, things do change, and I'm hoping that there will be changes for women, family, and children, for everybody, really. We need change. We need change. But we started the Orchards, which is the Orchards Children's Services now. And it started in a little house with 6 boys. And now it is, I think it's the largest foster care and adoption agency in the state of Michigan. And we're very proud of that. But we no longer take care of it because it's too big. We work with meals, our kosher Meals on Wheels, we started years and years ago, and it's been very successful. And then our numbers started going down. And that was the reason that people were going into assisted living and so on. But during this pandemic, the change has come again. The rise in people needing it who are in their homes, Meals on Wheels. So that's another thing that we've done. And we also spent a number of years creating the All Kids Playground in Waterford, where children of all abilities can play together. So what it is it's a playground that's safe for disabled children, but children who don't have physical disabilities or mental disabilities can come there too. And that's a chance for them to interact together. Perhaps we need an all-people's playground where we can talk together about these issues that are so important to us, things that disturb me and worry me about the future of our country. And I'm hoping that we'll hear some areas of agreement on Thursday. I think we will. Actually, I do think we will, because I've seen some things. I read the papers, such as they are. What's left? I do read the papers pretty faithfully. And I do see some areas where there's agreement. And when we're not so worried about trying to make sure that my opinion is heard and no one else's, and if we really listen, I think we could find some areas. I'm hoping that that's what Thursday will do. I'm hoping that there are people who will tune in, who will listen carefully, and who cannot talk back because only the panelists can talk. And we'll see that we do have a lot of places where we can work together. Certainly for education, certainly for, there shouldn't be hungry people. There should not be. Do you know that one of our programs, which we could not do this year, was the Back to School store that was in Detroit. And that was letting children get the right kind of clothes and school supplies and so on. And this year, because we couldn't really do this, we gave out coats through the social agencies. We also had backpacks for Oakland County. And I want to tell you something about that. The backpacks that we packed for years, for the past maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer. Yeah, longer than that. I think we've done it for about 10 years. And we gave out about 1,200 of those a year. They went to homeless children in Oakland County. And do you know that there are over 9,000 homeless children, most of whom were 9 years or of age or younger? That's startling. We should not have people who need food, as our Gleaners person talked about this morning. And we should not have people that don't have proper clothing and proper supplies for school. These things are terrible. This is not what a country like the United States should have or be proud to have. It's terrible. So those are the things that concern me. Our literacy program in Detroit has actually worked pretty well. We're at the Coleman Young School. It's an elementary, and it's a school that needs tutoring, and our members have gone there faithfully and tutored, and we've found that we've had a little bit of an increase in things. But none of us should want to have children who grow up not being able to read or write or do math or do whatever. These are the minimal things that we should have. So I'm hoping that we can find areas of agreement where we stop fighting one another. And on the medical issue, the same thing. No one should be denied medical care and adequate medical care because they don't have the money.
That is so true. Irma Glaser with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. Let's hope the one thing that came out of this pandemic was our communities coming together to reach out and to help one another. We'd like to see more of that in 2021. We thank you for your time here on the Oakland County MegaCast. Just as another reminder, the free webinar is going to be Thursday, December 3rd at 7 p.m. Irma, thank you so much for your time.
I've enjoyed it very much, and I've enjoyed your guests beforehand too. They were very informative. Thank you.